Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Station, watching the red planet Mars spin slowly below. The massive space station had been humanity's first line of defense for 10 years, but today it felt more like a tomb. The communication panel beeped with an incoming message that would change everything. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian fleet," said Lieutenant Amy Davis, her voice tight with worry. "They're requesting immediate response from Earth Command." Jake nodded and activated the main screen. The alien ambassador appeared, tall and pale, with large black eyes that seemed to look right through him. The creature's voice came through the translator with cold precision. "People of Earth, I am Ambassador Keth of the Zephyrian Collective. We have observed your species for many cycles. You are violent, unpredictable, and dangerous to galactic peace. We offer you one final opportunity for survival." Jake felt his stomach drop. This was the moment they had all feared. The ambassador continued without emotion. "You will surrender completely within 72 hours of your time. Your military will be dissolved. Your leaders will step down. Your people will be relocated to designated areas under our protection. Those who resist will be eliminated. This is not a negotiation. This is your final warning." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Jake looked around at his crew. These men and women had families on Earth, dreams for the future, lives they wanted to live. Now an alien empire was telling them to give it all up or die. "Get me Admiral Lisa Carter on Luna Base," Jake ordered. "Priority 1. Within minutes, Admiral Carter's weathered face appeared on screen. She had fought in 3 wars and never backed down from a fight. Today, she looked tired but determined. "Jake, I assume you received the same message we did," she said. "I've already spoken with President Katie Walsh. We're calling an emergency session of the Global Defense Council." "What are our options, Admiral?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. "Honestly, we're outgunned, outmanned, and out of time. Their fleet has over 3,000 ships. We have maybe 200 that are combat ready. Our best weapons barely scratched their scouts when they visited last year." Jake watched his crew work at their stations. Amy was running diagnostics on the defense grid. His weapons officer, Commander, Ryan Bell, was checking ammunition counts. They all knew the numbers were bad, but they kept working anyway. "There is one possibility," Admiral Carter continued. "Dr. Alex Turner at the Luna Research Facility thinks he might have something. He's been working on a project he calls Project Defiance. Says it's based on human psychology rather than technology." "Psychology against energy weapons?" Jake asked. "I know how it sounds. But Turner is brilliant. He thinks our biggest advantage is something the aliens don't understand about us. Our willingness to fight even when we know we'll lose." On the main screen, Jake could see Earth hanging in space like a blue marble. 7 billion people going about their lives, unaware that they had less than 3 days to live unless a miracle happened. Dr. Turner's voice came over the communication system. "Admiral Captain, I know this sounds crazy, but I think I've found something. The Zephyrians are a collective mind. They make decisions based on logic and efficiency. They've conquered 47 worlds, and every single species surrendered when faced with superior force." "What makes us different?" Jake asked. "We're unpredictable. We make emotional decisions. We fight lost causes. We sacrifice ourselves for ideas like freedom and dignity. To them, this is a mental illness. But it might be our salvation." Admiral Carter leaned forward. "Explain. I've been studying their previous conquests. Every species they faced was logical. When presented with extinction versus slavery, they chose slavery. It makes sense from a survival standpoint. But humans don't always choose survival. Jake thought about Earth's history. Humans had indeed fought hopeless battles throughout time. They had stood at places like Thermopylae, the Alamo, and Stalingrad, knowing they would die but fighting anyway. Sometimes they had even won. "What do you need from us, Doctor?" Jake asked. "Time, and every piece of data we can gather about their fleet. I think their collective consciousness might be their weakness, not their strength. If we can find a way to disrupt it with something they've never encountered before." Admiral Carter nodded. "You'll have whatever resources we can spare. Jake, I want you to coordinate with all defense stations. We need to buy Turner as much time as possible." Understood. "Admiral, what about the government's response? President Walsh is addressing the world in 2 hours. She's going to tell them the truth, all of it. The people deserve to know what we're facing." Jake felt a chill. Once the world knew about the ultimatum, everything would change. Panic, riots, despair. But maybe also something else. Maybe the same stubborn human spirit that Dr. Turner was talking about. "Captain," Amy called out from her station, "long-range sensors are picking up movement at the edge of the solar system. Looks like their advanced scouts are taking positions." Jake walked to the tactical display. Red dots marked alien ships spreading out in a perfect formation. Everything about them suggested order, planning, and overwhelming force. They moved like pieces on a chessboard, each one perfectly coordinated with the others. "How many?" he asked. 50 ships so far, but more are arriving every hour. They're not hiding from us. It's like they want us to see how hopeless this is." Jake understood. The Zephyrians were trying to break human morale before the fighting even started. Show them the massive fleet, let fear do most of the work. It was probably an effective strategy against logical species, but humans weren't always logical. "Amy, open a channel to all Earth defense stations, Luna Base, and Mars Command." "Channel open, Captain." Jake looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, an alien fleet was preparing to end human civilization. He thought about his daughter back on Earth, probably doing homework and complaining about her math teacher. He thought about all the things humanity had accomplished, all the beauty they had created, all the love they had shared. "This is Captain Jake Morrison. In 72 hours, the Zephyrian Collective expects us to surrender our freedom, our dignity, and our future. They think we'll choose slavery over death because that's what logical species do." He paused, looking at his crew. "They don't know us very well, do they?" A few smiles appeared on tired faces. Someone actually chuckled. "Let's show them what humans do when someone threatens our home." President Katie Walsh stood behind the podium in the Oval Office, looking directly into the camera that would broadcast her words to the entire world. She had been president for 3 years, dealing with economic problems and climate issues. Nothing had prepared her for this moment. "My fellow humans," she began, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was about to say. 48 hours ago, we received a message from an alien empire called the Zephyrian Collective. They have given us an ultimatum. Surrender completely in 72 hours or face extinction." She paused, letting the words sink in. Around the world, people stopped what they were doing. Traffic slowed as drivers pulled over to listen. Factories went quiet. Children in classrooms stared at screens in confusion. I want to be clear about what surrender means. It means the end of human government, the end of human freedom, the end of choosing our own destiny. They will relocate us to areas they control. They will decide how we live, what we do, even what we think. In the command bunker beneath Washington, Commander Ryan Bell watched the global response feeds. Panic was starting in some cities, but not as much as expected. Mostly people seemed stunned, trying to understand what this meant for their lives. The Zephyrian fleet has over 3,000 ships, President Walsh continued. Our entire defense force has fewer than 200. By every logical calculation, we cannot win this fight. They know this. They expect us to surrender. Dr. Emma Foster sat in her laboratory on Luna Base, working alongside Dr. Alex Turner. They had been trying to understand how the Zephyrian collective mind worked. The data they had was limited, but it painted a picture of a species that valued order and efficiency above all else. Emma, look at this, Turner said, pointing to his screen. Every species they conquered had the same response pattern: initial resistance, then negotiation, then surrender when they realized the odds. The whole process took between 6 and 10 days. What about species that kept fighting? Emma asked. That's just it. There weren't any. Not one species in there. 47 conquests fought to the end. When faced with total extinction, every single one chose slavery. President Walsh's voice continued from the speakers. I have spoken with our military leaders, our scientists, and representatives from every nation on Earth. We have considered every option available to us. In his apartment in New York, construction worker Sam Phillips watched the broadcast with his family. His wife held their young son, both of them looking scared and confused. Sam had served in the military before taking his civilian job. He understood what the president was really saying. Our decision is simple, President Walsh said, and the world held its breath. We choose freedom. We choose to fight. We choose to remain human, no matter the cost. Across the globe, reactions were immediate and mixed. Some people cheered, others protested, many just sat in shock. But something interesting began to happen. In cities and towns everywhere, people started coming together. Neighbors talked to neighbors, strangers helped strangers, as if facing. The end of everything made people remember what really mattered. Commander Bell's communication panel lit up with reports from around the world. Madam President, he said during a break in the broadcast, we're seeing massive volunteer registration for military service. The recruitment centers can't handle the numbers. In Tokyo, engineer Sophie Miller was already packing her bags. She had specialized knowledge about spacecraft systems and had received an emergency call to report to the defense headquarters. Her grandmother, a survivor of World War II, hugged her goodbye. We faced impossible odds before, the old woman said. Sometimes fighting is the only way to stay human. Dr. Turner received a priority message from his research team. Scientists from around the world were volunteering to join Project Defiance, even though they didn't know what it was. Physicists, psychologists, computer specialists, even artists and musicians were offering their help. Dr. Foster, Turner said, I think I'm beginning to understand something. The Zephyrians study their targets before conquest. They know our technology, our weapons, our military capabilities, but they might not understand our culture. What do you mean? They've seen our wars, our conflicts, our violence, but have they seen our art, our music, our stories? Have they seen what happens when humans face extinction not as individuals, but as a species? On Mars, Captain Jake Morrison was coordinating with civilian evacuation teams. Thousands of people were volunteering to help move families to the underground shelters that had been built for asteroid impacts. They worked day and night, not because they were ordered to, but because it was the right thing to do. Major Ben Rodriguez reported from the asteroid belt, where mining crews were converting their equipment into makeshift weapons. Captain, They're not just modifying their tools. They're volunteering to stay and fight. Miners, engineers, maintenance crews. They know they probably won't survive, but they want to contribute. President Walsh concluded her broadcast with words that would be remembered forever. To the Zephyrian Collective, I say this. You have misjudged us. You see our conflicts and assume we are weak because we fight among ourselves. You see our emotions and assume we are unstable because we don't always choose logic. In the Deep Space Monitoring Station, Lieutenant Claire Webb detected increased activity from the alien fleet. They were responding to Earth's broadcast, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of immediately attacking, they seemed to be waiting, studying the human response. But you don't understand what you're seeing, the president continued. Yes, we fight among ourselves, but we unite against threats to our freedom. Yes, we make emotional decisions, but our emotions give us strength you cannot comprehend. You offer us slavery and call it mercy. We choose death and call it victory. Dr. Helen Brooks, a physicist who had been working on theoretical weapons, made a breakthrough in her laboratory. She discovered that human brain patterns created a specific type of electromagnetic signature when experiencing strong emotions like courage, love, or determination. It was something that had never been studied before because no one thought it mattered. "Turner, you need to see this," she called excitedly. "Human emotions might actually be measurable energy. If the Zephyrians are psychically connected, this could be exactly what we need." The global response to the president's speech surprised everyone, including Earth's leaders. Instead of mass panic, there was mass mobilization. People didn't run and hide. They stood up and volunteered. Factories began converting to weapons production. Schools became coordination centers. Retirement homes became communication hubs as elderly people used their experience to help organize younger volunteers. Commander Bell watched the data streams with amazement. "Madam President, we're seeing something unprecedented. Global cooperation at a level we've never achieved before. It's like the threat of extinction has made us more human, not less." In Australia, Dr. Matt Thompson was leading efforts to create underground resistance networks. Even if the surface war was lost, humans were preparing to keep fighting from below. Cave systems, old mines, subway tunnels. Anywhere people could hide and continue the fight. President Walsh ended her broadcast with a direct message to the aliens. "You gave us 72 hours to surrender. We give you the same time to reconsider your attack. Because once this fight begins, you'll discover something that 47 other species never had the courage to show you." The transmission ended, but around the world, the real work was just beginning. Humans were doing what they had always done when faced with extinction. They were refusing to go quietly. In space, the Zephyrian fleet received the human response with confusion. Their collective consciousness had never encountered a species that chose certain death over guaranteed survival. They began to study the human broadcasts more carefully, trying to understand what they were missing. They would soon learn that some things cannot be understood through logic alone. The Zephyrian fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system like a storm of metal and energy. 3,000 ships moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with alien technology that humanity could barely understand. Each vessel was larger than Earth's biggest space station, and they moved with the cold precision of a machine built for conquest. Colonel Sam Phillips stood in the command center of Outpost 7, the farthest human defense station from Earth. Through the massive viewing window, he could see the alien fleet spreading out like stars in the darkness. His hands were steady as he checked his weapon systems one final time. "Sir," reported his communications officer, We're receiving movement data from all our scouts. The aliens are deploying in standard conquest formation. 3 waves, with heavy destroyers in front and command ships protected in the rear. Sam nodded. The Zephyrians were following their usual pattern, the same one they had used to conquer 47 other worlds. It was efficient, logical, and had never failed them before. But they had never faced humans before. "Open a channel to all outer defense stations," Sam ordered. "It's time to welcome our guests." Captain Amy Davis flew her experimental fighter through the asteroid belt, leading a squadron of 12 other pilots. Her ship was small and fast, built with human ingenuity rather than alien technology. The weapons were primitive compared to what the Zephyrians had, but they were designed for one thing: causing maximum damage before being destroyed. "Eagle Squadron, this is Eagle 1, Amy said into her radio. "Remember, we're not trying to win this battle. We're trying to make them pay for every inch of space they take." The first wave of Zephyrian ships approached the outer defense grid. These were massive vessels, each one capable of destroying a human city. Their energy shields glowed with power, and their weapons could punch through asteroid rock like it was paper. Sam watched them approach on his tactical display, red dots moving in perfect order exactly as their analysis had predicted. The aliens probably expected the humans to fire a few desperate shots, realize the hopelessness of their situation, and then surrender. That was what logical beings would do. "All stations, this is Outpost 7, Sam broadcast. Fire at will." The outer defense grid opened fire with everything they had: energy beams, missile salvos, and experimental weapons that Earth's scientists had developed in the past year. The space around the Zephyrian ships lit up with explosions and laser fire. The alien shields held easily. Most of the human weapons barely scratched their hulls. But something unexpected happened. Instead of responding with overwhelming force, the Zephyrians paused. Their perfect formation wavered slightly as they tried to understand why the humans were attacking when defeat was certain. Amy led her squadron in a direct attack on one of the destroyer ships. Her fighter twisted and spun through space, avoiding the alien weapons that tried to track her. She wasn't flying like a military pilot following standard tactics. She was flying like a human who had nothing left to lose. "Eagle 2, break left and hit their communication array," she ordered. "Eagle 3, aim for those weapon ports. Don't worry about getting home." The suicide tactics confused the Zephyrian gunners. Their weapons were designed to track predictable flight patterns, but the human pilots were doing things that made no tactical sense. They flew directly into enemy fire, sacrificed themselves to damage single components, and kept fighting even when their ships were falling apart. One of Amy's pilots, Lieutenant Jack Carter, managed to crash his damaged fighter directly into a Zephyrian weapon system. The explosion was tiny compared to the massive alien ship, but it disabled an entire gun battery. The aliens had to divert resources to repair the damage and adjust their formation. Colonel Phillips watched the battle from his command center. The humans were losing, exactly as expected, but they were losing slower than the aliens had planned. Every small victory, every unexpected tactic, every moment of delay was buying precious time for Earth. "Sir, the second wave is moving up," his tactical officer reported. "They're deploying in a tighter formation. Looks like they're adapting to our tactics." "Good," Sam said with a grim smile. "That means they're thinking about us instead of just following their standard plan." The Zephyrian commander, a being called Fleetmind Vash, studied the human resistance with growing confusion. The collective consciousness of his species had fought thousands of battles, conquered dozens of worlds, and never encountered anything like this. The humans were clearly outmatched, but they kept fighting with a determination that made no logical sense. Analysis. Mind Keth, Vash communicated through their shared thoughts. Explain the human behavior. They should have surrendered after seeing our superior force. Unknown, Fleet Mind. Their resistance serves no survival purpose. They are sacrificing ships and lives for minimal tactical advantage. It appears to be a form of collective madness. But the Zephyrians were beginning to realize that this madness had a cost. Every human attack, no matter how hopeless, required them to respond. They had to adjust formations, repair damage, and account for unpredictable tactics. The quick conquest they had planned was turning into a grinding battle. Captain Davis managed to survive her first attack run and was regrouping with the remaining fighters. Only 6 of her original 12 pilots were still alive, but they had accomplished something important. They had proven that humans could hurt the aliens even if they couldn't defeat them. "Eagle Squadron, this is Eagle 1, she broadcast. "We've got new orders from command. Fall back to Defense Grid 2 and prepare for another run." "Ma'am," came the voice of Eagle 5, "we're down to half ammunition and most of our ships are damaged." "What's the point of falling back?" Amy looked at her fuel gauges and weapon indicators. Everything was running low and her fighter had taken hits that should have destroyed it. But she was still flying, still fighting, still human. "The point is that we're still here," she said. "Every minute we keep fighting is another minute Earth has to prepare. Every alien ship we damage is one less that reaches our home." The battle continued for 6 hours. Human ships and stations were destroyed one by one, but each one fought until the very end. The Zephyrians found themselves having to completely destroy every human position because surrender was apparently not an option. Major Ben Rodriguez commanded the defense station at Jupiter. When the aliens reached his position, he had a choice: evacuate his crew and save their lives, or stay and fight a hopeless battle. He called his officers together and explained the situation. "Anyone who wants to leave can take the escape pods. Now," he said. "No judgment, no shame. You've all done more than enough. Not a single person left their post." The Jupiter station held out for 3 hours against impossible odds. When the shields finally failed and the hull began to break apart, Rodriguez sent one final message back to Earth. "This is Jupiter Station. We held them for as long as we could. Tell our families we chose to stay human." The explosion that destroyed the station also damaged 2 Zephyrian ships. It wasn't much, but it was something. And throughout their collective consciousness, the aliens began to feel something they had never experienced before: uncertainty. Colonel Phillips watched the tactical display as the outer defenses fell one by one. Each position fought to the end, buying time and making the aliens pay for every victory. The Zephyrians were winning, but they were learning that conquering humans was different from conquering any other species. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a message from the alien fleet. They're offering us another chance to surrender." Sam looked at his remaining crew, young men and women who had volunteered to stand between Earth and destruction. They were scared. He could see it in their eyes. But they were ready to die fighting. "Send them our response," Sam said. "Tell them we're humans. We don't surrender." The battle for the outer solar system was ending, but the war for humanity's freedom was just beginning. And in the depths of space, the Zephyrian collective consciousness was starting to understand that they had chosen to fight something they had never encountered before, a species that would rather die free than live as slaves. The outer defenses had fallen, but the cost to the Zephyrian fleet was becoming clear. Fleet Mind Vash studied the damage reports with growing concern. They had lost 12 ships completely destroyed and 47 more requiring major repairs. Against any other species, such losses would have been unthinkable for what should have been a simple conquest. Major Ben Rodriguez floated in the wreckage of Jupiter Station, his emergency suit keeping him alive in the cold vacuum of space. He had been thrown clear when the command center exploded, and now he watched alien salvage ships moving through the debris. Most of his crew was gone, but their sacrifice had bought Earth precious time. Through his suit radio, he could hear scattered transmissions from other survivors. Engineer Sophie Miller was trapped in a damaged section of the station, but still alive. Her voice was weak but determined as she worked to sabotage the alien salvage operations. "This is Miller in Section C," she transmitted. "I've rigged the reactor core to overload. Any alien ship that tries to dock here is going to get a surprise." Rodriguez smiled despite his situation. Even in defeat, humans were still finding ways to fight back. He activated his emergency beacon, not to call for rescue, but to warn any human ships in the area about alien patrol patterns he had observed. On Luna Base, Dr. Alex Turner and Dr. Emma Foster were analyzing data from the outer system battles. What they were seeing amazed them. The Zephyrian collective consciousness was adapting to human tactics, but the adaptation was causing stress in their mental network. "Emma, look at these communication intercepts," Turner said, pointing to his screen. "The alien collective mind is having to process human behavior patterns that don't fit their logical framework. It's like trying to solve a math problem where the numbers keep changing randomly." Dr. Foster studied the data. Their collective consciousness evolved to handle logical, predictable thinking. But human emotions and unpredictable actions are creating what looks like mental static in their network. Exactly. And here's the interesting part. The more humans they fight, the more intense this static becomes. Every act of seemingly irrational human courage is like a virus in their collective mind. Captain Jake Morrison received updates from the inner defense grid as the Zephyrian fleet moved deeper into the solar system. The aliens were being more cautious now, taking time to scan for hidden weapons and unexpected tactics. The quick conquest they had planned was turning into a careful, methodical advance. "Captain," Lieutenant Amy Davis reported from her fighter squadron, "we're seeing something strange. The alien formations are spreading out more than usual. It's like they're expecting us to do something unpredictable." "Maybe we should give them what they expect," Jake replied. "How many fighters do we have left?" 43 operational fighters, across all squadrons. Most are damaged, but still flying. Jake looked at the tactical display. The Zephyrian fleet had over 2,000 ships remaining, and they were approaching Mars orbit. By every military calculation, the human fighters should retreat and save themselves for the final defense of Earth. But humans didn't always follow military calculations. "Amy, I want you to do something that makes no tactical sense. Take half the fighters and attack their lead ships head-on. Make it look like a desperate charge." "Sir, that's suicide. We'll be wiped out in minutes." "I know. But while you're drawing their attention, the other half will hit their support ships from behind. They won't expect us to divide our forces when we're already outnumbered." Commander Ryan Bell was coordinating the civilian evacuation from Mars colony when the alien fleet arrived in the planet's orbit. Thousands of families were being moved to underground shelters, but the process was taking longer than planned. Children were scared and crying. Parents were trying to stay calm, and everyone was asking questions that had no good answers. "How long do we have?" asked Dr. Helen Brooks, who had volunteered to help with the evacuation while her research team prepared their equipment. "The aliens are taking their time," Ryan replied. "They seem to be studying our defenses instead of attacking immediately. Maybe our outer system resistance made them more careful. Or maybe they're learning that humans don't react the way other species do." The Zephyrian collective consciousness was indeed learning, but the knowledge was causing problems they had never faced before. Analysis mind Keth struggled to categorize the human behavior patterns. Every model they created was broken by new examples of human unpredictability. "Fleet mind Vash," Keth communicated. "The human resistance is affecting our operational efficiency. We are spending 37% more time on tactical analysis than projected." Explain. "Their actions do not follow logical patterns. They sacrifice valuable resources for minimal gain. They continue fighting when victory is impossible. They choose death over survival. These behaviors do not fit our conquest protocols." Fleet Mind Vash felt something unusual in the collective consciousness: uncertainty. For the first time in centuries of conquest, they were facing a species that challenged their fundamental understanding of intelligent behavior. Amy Davis led her squadron in the desperate charge against the Zephyrian lead ships. 20 fighters against 200 alien vessels. It was hopeless and everyone knew it. But as they flew into the enemy formation, something unexpected happened. The alien ships pulled back slightly, reorganizing their formation to handle the unpredictable human attack. "Eagle Squadron, they're actually afraid of us," Amy laughed over the radio. 20 little fighters and they're changing their entire formation." The distraction worked perfectly. While the aliens focused on the frontal assault, the second group of human fighters hit their support ships from behind. The damage was minimal, but the psychological effect was enormous. The Zephyrians realized that humans would attack from any direction, at any time, regardless of the odds. Engineer Miller succeeded in her sabotage mission. When Zephyrian salvage ships tried to dock with the Jupiter station wreckage, the reactor overload destroyed 2 alien vessels and damaged a third. The explosion also created a debris field that would make salvage operations dangerous for weeks. The news of Miller's success spread through the human resistance networks. A single engineer had destroyed more alien ships than entire squadrons in previous battles. It proved that human ingenuity and determination could find ways to hurt the enemy even in apparent defeat. Dr. Turner made a breakthrough in his research when he analyzed the latest communication intercepts. The Zephyrian collective consciousness was showing signs of what he could only describe as confusion. Their mental network was designed for logical, efficient thinking, but human behavior was introducing chaos into their system. "Emma, I think we've found our weapon," he said excitedly. "It's not a gun or a bomb. It's us. Our humanity itself is disrupting their collective mind." "How do we weaponize that?" "We need to amplify what we're already doing. Every act of human courage, every irrational choice to fight instead of surrender, every emotional decision that makes no logical sense, it's all creating interference in their collective consciousness." On Mars, the evacuation was nearly complete when the aliens finally attacked. But instead of the overwhelming assault everyone expected, the Zephyrian ships moved carefully, scanning for traps and hidden weapons. The human resistance had made them paranoid. Commander Bell watched the alien ships approach the Mars defense grid. The human weapons opened fire, and once again the aliens were surprised by tactics that made no military sense. Human gunners targeted seemingly random parts of alien ships, not the logical weak points that any military computer would identify. Why are they shooting at our communication arrays instead of our weapons? One Zephyrian tactical mind asked, through their collective consciousness. Unknown. Human targeting patterns do not match any logical military doctrine. What the aliens didn't understand was that the humans were targeting systems they thought might be important to the collective consciousness. Communication arrays, sensor networks, anything that might disrupt the mental connection between alien ships. The battle for Mars lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the human defenses were destroyed, but the Zephyrian fleet had lost 23 more ships. More importantly, their collective consciousness was beginning to show signs of strain. The constant need to analyze unpredictable human behavior was using mental resources they had never needed before. Major Rodriguez was finally rescued by a human patrol ship that found him drifting in the Jupiter station debris. As they flew toward Earth, he looked back at the wreckage of the outer defenses. Hundreds of humans had died, but they had proven something important. "We can hurt them," he said to the rescue crew. "They're stronger than us, but we can make them pay for every victory. And maybe, if we keep fighting long enough, we can find a way to win." Behind them, the Zephyrian fleet continued its advance toward Earth. But for the first time in their species' history, they were approaching a conquest with uncertainty and doubt. The humans had planted something in their collective consciousness that no amount of logical analysis could remove. The knowledge that some species would rather die fighting than live in chains. And in the depths of their shared mind, that knowledge was growing like a cancer of hope. The Zephyrian fleet reached Earth's inner system with fewer ships than they had ever lost in a conquest. Fleet Mind Vash felt something that the collective consciousness had no word for: doubt. The humans had turned what should have been a simple conquest into a grinding war of attrition that challenged everything the Zephyrians believed about intelligent behavior. Commander Greg Adams stood on the bridge of the Earth defense platform, watching the alien fleet approach through the viewing port. The massive structure orbited between Earth and the Moon, bristling with humanity's most advanced weapons. It was their last line of defense, and everyone knew it. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "the alien fleet is moving into attack formation, but they're keeping more distance than usual. They seem to be expecting another surprise." Greg smiled grimly. The humans had taught the aliens to fear unpredictability, and now that fear was making them cautious. Every moment of caution was another moment for Earth to prepare its final defense. Lieutenant Claire Webb was coordinating the planetary defense grid from her station deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Hundreds of missile silos, energy weapons, and experimental devices were all under her control. The weapons were powerful, but everyone knew they wouldn't be enough to stop the massive alien fleet. "Commander Adams," she reported, "all planetary. Defenses are online and ready. Dr. Turner says he needs another 2 hours to complete his project." "He'll have it," Greg replied, "no matter what it costs." Dr. Turner and Dr. Foster were working frantically in their laboratory beneath Luna Base. Their breakthrough with the collective consciousness research had led to something unprecedented. A device that could broadcast human emotional patterns directly into the Zephyrian mental network. "The theory is sound," Turner explained to Admiral Lisa Carter over the communication link. "Human emotions create unique electromagnetic signatures. If we can amplify and broadcast these signatures, we might be able to disrupt their collective consciousness." "What kind of emotions?" Admiral Carter asked. "The ones that define us as human. Courage in the face of impossible odds. Love for family and home. the determination to fight for freedom even when death is certain. The Zephyrian collective mind evolved to process logical thoughts, but human emotions are chaotic, unpredictable, and powerful. Dr. Helen Brooks had been working on the technical aspects of the broadcast system. "Admiral, we're going to need people to volunteer as emotional broadcasters. They'll be directly connected to the device while experiencing intense emotions. It's never been tested, and we don't know what the effects might be." "I'll volunteer," Greg Adams said immediately. "So will I," added Claire Webb. "Count me in," said Captain Jake Morrison from his defense station. Admiral Carter felt pride swell in her chest. Even facing the unknown dangers of an experimental device, humans were volunteering to risk everything for the chance to protect their species. The alien fleet opened fire on the Earth defense platform with devastating energy weapons. The station's shields held for several minutes before beginning to fail. Greg Adams watched his crew work at their stations, calm and professional even as death approached. "All stations, this is Adams," he broadcast. "Fire everything we have. Make them remember this fight." The human weapons responded with everything they had. Energy beams, missile salvos, and experimental weapons struck the alien ships. The Zephyrian shields absorbed most of the damage, but some shots got through. More importantly, the human tactics continued to confuse the alien commanders. Instead of concentrating fire on the most dangerous alien ships, the humans seemed to target vessels at random. They focused on communication ships, support vessels, and even ships that posed no immediate threat. To the logical Zephyrian mind, it made no sense. But the humans weren't targeting randomly. They were targeting ships they thought might be important to the collective consciousness. Every communication relay they destroyed, every sensor network they damaged, was another disruption to the alien mental network. Captain Morrison's fighter squadron was down to 12 ships, but they continued their desperate attacks. Amy Davis led her remaining pilots in a direct assault on what looked like a command ship, diving through the alien formation with reckless courage. "Eagle Squadron, this is Eagle 1, she called out. "Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for everyone who ever dreamed of being free." The squadron's attack run was devastating for the humans. 11 of the 12 fighters were destroyed in the alien defensive fire. But Amy's fighter managed to crash directly into the command ship's communication array, causing a cascade failure that temporarily cut the vessel off from the collective consciousness. For 37 seconds, the crew of that ship experienced something they had never felt before: individual thought. Separated from the collective mind, they suddenly understood fear, loneliness, and the terrible weight of making decisions alone. When the communication system was repaired and they rejoined the collective, they brought with them something that began to spread through the network: doubt. Dr. Turner activated his experimental device as the Earth defense platform began to break apart around Commander Adams. The machine hummed to life, preparing to broadcast human emotions directly into space. "Greg, we need you to think about why you're fighting," Turner instructed through the communication system. "Not the tactical reasons, but the emotional ones. Think about what makes this worth dying for." Adams closed his eyes as the defense platform shuddered under alien fire. He thought about his daughter's laugh, his wife's smile, the feeling of Earth's sun on his face. He thought about all the humans who had volunteered to die fighting, and all the ones still hiding in shelters hoping for a miracle. The device activated, and something unprecedented happened. Human emotions, love, courage, determination, and hope, were broadcast directly into the Zephyrian collective consciousness. The alien's mental network, designed for logical processing, was suddenly flooded with chaotic human feelings. Fleet mind. Vash felt the invasion of human emotions like a physical blow. The collective consciousness, which had operated with perfect logical harmony for millennia, was suddenly filled with contradictory feelings and irrational thoughts. What is happening? Analysis mind Keth communicated, but his thoughts were jumbled, with human memories that weren't his own. I am experiencing feelings that serve no logical purpose. Across the fleet, Zephyrian crew members began to experience human emotions as if they were their own. They felt the love that drove humans to sacrifice themselves for others. They experienced the courage that made humans fight hopeless battles. They understood, for the first time, what it meant to value something more than survival. The effect was devastating to their collective consciousness. Ships began to lose coordination as their crews struggled with unfamiliar emotions. Some Zephyrians experienced what humans would call empathy, suddenly understanding the pain they had caused to 47 conquered species. Lieutenant Webb watched her tactical displays as something impossible began to happen. The alien fleet was slowing down, their perfect formations becoming ragged. Ships were falling back, their advance stuttering as the collective consciousness struggled with the chaos of human emotions. "Turner, whatever you're doing, it's working," she reported. "The alien attack is losing coordination, but the broadcast was affecting the human volunteers as well." Commander Adams, directly connected to the device, was experiencing an overload of emotion that threatened to overwhelm his mind. He felt not just his own feelings, but somehow the emotions of every human fighting for their species' survival. "Turner," he gasped, "I can feel them. All of them. Everyone who's died fighting. Everyone who's still fighting. It's too much." "Hold on, Greg. We need just a few more minutes." Adams gritted his teeth and held on, using his determination to keep the device active even as it threatened to burn out his mind. Around him, the defense platform was falling apart, but the weapon they had created was working better than anyone had dared hope. In the Zephyrian fleet, chaos was spreading through the collective consciousness. For the first time in their species' history, they were experiencing emotions that made them question their actions. Some ships actually stopped firing, their crews paralyzed by feelings of guilt and remorse. "Fleet mind," one of the tactical minds communicated. "I am experiencing what humans call empathy. I feel the pain of the species we have conquered. Is this wrong?" Vash struggled to maintain control of the collective consciousness as human emotions continued to flood their network. The logical frameworks that had guided their species for thousands of years were being challenged by feelings they had never imagined. The Earth defense platform finally exploded, but Commander Adams had held the broadcast system active long enough. The human emotions were now spreading through the Zephyrian collective consciousness like a virus, carried from ship to ship through their mental network. Dr. Turner watched the readings from his destroyed device with amazement. "Emma, we did it. We've introduced chaos into their ordered system. They're experiencing human emotions whether they want to or not." The Zephyrian fleet was in disarray. Ships that had moved in perfect formation for centuries were now struggling to coordinate their actions. The human emotions spreading through the Zephyrian collective consciousness were causing something unprecedented in galactic history. Fleet Mind Vash struggled to maintain control as his perfectly ordered mental network became chaotic with unfamiliar feelings. Worse yet, these emotions were awakening memories from conquered worlds that had been buried in their collective mind for decades. Captain Jake Morrison led the final human assault from his damaged command ship, watching as alien vessels began to break formation. Some Zephyrian ships had stopped firing entirely, their crews apparently struggling with internal conflicts. The perfect war machine that had conquered 47 worlds was falling apart from the inside. "All units, this is Morrison," he broadcast to the remaining human forces. "The aliens are in disarray. Press the attack while we have the chance." But something even more extraordinary was happening across the galaxy. Dr. Turner's emotional broadcast hadn't just affected the Zephyrian fleet at Earth. It had traveled through their collective consciousness to every Zephyrian outpost, every conquered world, every corner of their empire. On the world of Kepler 442b, the Thaylan people had been enslaved by the Zephyrians for 37 years. They had built their cities according to Zephyrian designs, worked in factories that served the alien empire, and slowly forgotten what freedom felt like. But now, as human emotions flooded the collective consciousness, something was stirring in their memories. Elder Sithka of the Thaylans felt it first, a sudden surge of emotion that wasn't his own. Images flashed through his mind of humans choosing death over slavery, fighting impossible battles, sacrificing everything for an idea called freedom. The emotions came with the images: courage, love, determination, and something else: hope. "What is this feeling?" he whispered to his daughter, Nethka, who worked in the mineral extraction facility. "I feel it too, Father. It's like remembering something we lost long ago." Across their world, Thalans began to stop their work. The overwhelming human emotions pouring through the Zephyrian network were triggering their own suppressed memories of resistance, of the time before conquest, when they had been free. On Glisa 581G, the aquatic Merhai had been conquered 12 years ago. Their beautiful coral cities had been converted into processing centers for the Zephyrian war machine. But as human emotions spread through the collective consciousness, the Merhai began to remember their ancient songs of freedom. War singer Tolanash felt human courage flood through her mind, mixed with memories of her own people's resistance. She began to sing. Not the work songs the Zephyrians had taught them, but the old battle hymns that had been forbidden. "Sing, my people," she called out through the water. "Remember who we were before they came." The song spread through the ocean, cities like a current, awakening memories of freedom that the Zephyrians thought they had erased forever. Fleet Mind Vash was experiencing something that terrified him: individual thought. As the collective consciousness became more chaotic, he found himself separated from the shared mind, forced to think and feel on his own. The isolation was crushing, but it also brought clarity. For the first time in his existence, he wondered if conquest was really the right path for his species. The human emotions flooding his mind showed him another way: cooperation instead of domination, freedom instead of slavery, love instead of fear. Analysis. "Mind Keth," he tried to communicate, but found the collective consciousness so disrupted that clear communication was impossible. Individual Zephyrians across the fleet were having their own experiences of separation and doubt. Dr. Helen Brooks was monitoring communication signals from across the galaxy when she made an incredible discovery. "Turner, Emma, you need to see this. We're picking up transmissions from dozens of systems in Zephyrian space. It looks like rebellions." Dr. Turner studied the data with growing excitement. The emotional broadcast didn't just affect the fleet. Here, it traveled through their collective consciousness to their entire empire. We've accidentally triggered the largest rebellion in galactic history. On Proxima Centauri b, the insectoid Crix had been enslaved for over 50 years. Their hive mind society had been easily dominated by the Zephyrian collective consciousness. But human emotions were disrupting both mental networks, allowing individual Crix to think independently for the first time in generations. Queen Mind Zakath felt human love and sacrifice flooding through her consciousness. She understood suddenly what it meant to value the freedom of her children more than their survival. The revelation was revolutionary for a species that had always put the collective above the individual. "My children," she broadcast to the Crix across their world, "we have forgotten what it means to choose our own destiny. These humans, they show us another way." The Crix rebellion began with simple acts of defiance, workers stopping their assigned tasks, warriors questioning their orders, thinkers beginning to imagine a future without Zephyrian rule. Admiral Lisa Carter was coordinating Earth's defenses when reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. Rebellion signals from over a dozen worlds, Zephyrian ships abandoning their posts, entire sectors of the alien empire falling into chaos. "This is impossible," she said to her staff. "One emotional broadcast can't have triggered all this." Lieutenant Claire Webb, monitoring the communication networks, had a different theory. "Admiral, I think we've been looking at this wrong. The collective consciousness that made the Zephyrians so powerful, it's also their greatest weakness. When we infected it with human emotions, those emotions spread to every connected mind in their empire." Captain Morrison was leading the assault on the remaining Zephyrian ships when something unprecedented happened. One of the alien vessels stopped firing and began broadcasting a message. "Human ships." The transmission came through in broken English. "This is Ship Mind Vralth of the Zephyrian vessel designation 7439. I request permission to withdraw from combat." Morrison couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Repeat your last transmission, alien ship." "I am experiencing what you call conscience. The emotions from your species have shown me that conquest is wrong. I no longer wish to participate in the destruction of your world." Across the Zephyrian fleet, similar scenes were playing out. Individual ship commanders were breaking away from the collective consciousness, making their own decisions for the first time in their lives. Some chose to continue fighting, clinging to the old ways. But others were laying down their weapons and requesting passage home. On the world of Wolf 359C, the crystalline Shard High had been conquered 8 years ago. Their geometric cities had been restructured to serve Zephyrian needs, their crystal song. Communications suppressed. But as human emotions flooded through the collective consciousness, the Shard High began to remember their harmonic frequencies of freedom. Crystal singer Dal Eth felt human hope resonating through her crystalline structure. The emotion created new harmonic patterns that spread to other Shard High, awakening their dormant songs of rebellion. "Sing the frequencies of freedom," she called out, her crystal voice ringing across the city. "Remember the songs our ancestors sang before the silence." Dr. Turner was monitoring the galactic situation when he realized the full scope of what they had accomplished. "Emma, we haven't just saved Earth. We've given the entire galaxy a chance at freedom. But will it be enough?" Dr. Foster asked. "The Zephyrians still have superior technology and numbers." "They had superior unity," Turner replied. "But unity without choice is just slavery. We've given their empire something it was never designed to handle: individual conscience." Fleet Mind Vash made a decision that would have been impossible just hours earlier. As the collective consciousness crumbled around him and rebellion spread across the galaxy, He chose to act as an individual rather than as part of the machine. He opened a communication channel to the human forces, his voice carrying emotions that no Zephyrian had ever expressed before: regret, sorrow, and something that might have been respect. "Human defenders," he transmitted, "I am Fleet Mind Vash. I wish to discuss terms." Captain Morrison looked at his tactical display, showing hundreds of Zephyrian ships in disarray, many of them requesting permission to withdraw. The perfect war machine had become a collection of individuals, each struggling with newly awakened consciences. "What terms did you have in mind?" Morrison replied. "The terms of beings who have learned that some things are more important than conquest," Vash answered. "The terms of species who choose cooperation over domination. Across the galaxy, the greatest empire in known history was falling apart, not through military defeat, but through the simple recognition that freedom was a right belonging to all intelligent beings. Humanity's greatest weapon had not been technology or strategy, but the infectious nature of their own humanity. The rebellion that started with one species' refusal to surrender was becoming a galactic revolution for freedom. The rebellion was spreading faster than anyone could have imagined. Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the command center, watching displays that showed uprising after uprising across Zephyrian space. 47 worlds that had been enslaved for decades were suddenly remembering what freedom meant. General Matt Thompson was coordinating with resistance cells that had spontaneously formed on dozens of worlds. The communications were chaotic, coming through jury-rigged transmitters and improvised networks, but the message was clear: the galaxy was rising up. "Admiral," he reported, "we're in contact with 17 different species across 12 star systems. They're all reporting the same thing. Their people are refusing to work, fighting their guards, and demanding freedom." On the Thaylan homeworld, Elder Sithka was leading his people in their first act of rebellion in 37 years. The mineral extraction facility that had operated without interruption since the conquest was now silent. Thaylan workers had put down their tools and were gathering in the central plaza, their voices raised in ancient songs of freedom. "My people," Sithka called out to the crowd, his voice carrying the human emotions that had awakened their own. "We have lived as slaves so long that we forgot we could choose to be free. These humans have reminded us that some things are worth dying for." The Zephyrian guards at the facility were paralyzed by confusion. Their collective consciousness was so disrupted that they couldn't coordinate a response. Some guards were even experiencing the human emotions themselves, beginning to question whether enslaving other species was morally right. Dr. Helen Brooks was analyzing the communication patterns when she made a startling discovery. "Turner, the emotional broadcast isn't just affecting current Zephyrian space. We're picking up signals from the deep archives of their collective consciousness. It's like human emotions are unlocking memories they've suppressed for centuries." "What kind of memories?" Dr. Turner asked. "Memories of the species they conquered. Every thought, every feeling, every moment of resistance from 47 different worlds. The Zephyrians absorbed it all into their collective mind, but they buried it deep to maintain their logical framework. And now, human emotions are bringing it all to the surface." "Exactly. The Zephyrians aren't just experiencing human feelings, they're experiencing the suppressed emotions of every species they've ever conquered. On the aquatic world of the Merhai, warsinger Tolnash was leading a revolution that spread through the ocean cities like a tidal wave. The beautiful coral structures that had been converted into processing centers were being reclaimed by their original inhabitants. "Sing the deep songs," Tolnash called out, her voice carrying through the water. Let the ocean remember freedom! The Mirhai had always been connected through their songs, but the Zephyrians had suppressed their ancient melodies and replaced them with work rhythms. Now, as human emotions flooded through the collective consciousness, the old songs were returning with power that shook the very foundations of the alien installations. Captain Jake Morrison was witnessing something unprecedented in the space around Earth. Zephyrian ships were not just withdrawing, many were actively helping the human defense forces. Ship-mind Vralth had been joined by 17 other vessels whose crews had experienced individual conscience for the first time. Captain Morrison, Vralth transmitted, "My crew wishes to assist in the evacuation of your wounded. We have medical facilities that could help your injured personnel." Morrison looked at his tactical officer in amazement. Enemy ships were volunteering to provide medical aid. It was so far outside normal military procedure that he wasn't sure how to respond. "Vralth, how do I know this isn't a trap?" "Because I have experienced something your species calls empathy. I feel the pain of your wounded as if it were my own. This feeling compels me to help, even though logic suggests I should still consider you an enemy." Colonel Sam Phillips, who had survived the outer system battles, was now coordinating ground-based resistance networks. Reports were coming in from around the world of Zephyrian occupation forces laying down their weapons and requesting asylum. "Ma'am," he reported to Admiral Carter, "we have over 300 Zephyrian soldiers in custody, but they're not prisoners. They're refugees. They've experienced individual thought for the first time, and they're terrified of being forced back into the collective consciousness." The crystalline Shardhai on Wolf 359C were creating something beautiful and terrible. Crystal singer Daleth had organized her people into harmonic formations that were literally singing their crystal cities back to their original configurations. The geometric patterns imposed by the Zephyrians were dissolving as the Shardhai reclaimed their architectural heritage. "Sing the frequency of freedom," Daleth called out, her crystal voice creating resonance patterns that spread across the planet. "Let our cities remember their true forms." The harmonic rebellion was so powerful that it was actually damaging Zephyrian equipment. The alien technology, designed for logical efficiency, couldn't handle the chaotic beauty of Shardhai crystal songs. Fleet Mind Vash was experiencing something that his species had no words for: moral crisis. As individual conscience awakened in his mind, he began to understand the magnitude of what his people had done. 47 worlds enslaved, billions of beings forced to live without freedom, entire cultures suppressed or destroyed. Analysis Mind Keth. He tried to communicate through the fractured collective consciousness. "What have we become?" Keth's response came back fragmented, filled with the same moral confusion that was spreading through the Zephyrian fleet. I'm experiencing guilt for actions I never questioned before. The humans have infected us with conscience. Is conscience an infection? Or is it the natural state of intelligent beings? It was a question that would have been impossible for a Zephyrian to ask just days earlier. The collective consciousness had always provided answers, not questions. But human emotions had taught them to doubt, to wonder, to choose. Dr. Emma Foster was monitoring the galactic situation when she noticed something remarkable happening in the communication patterns. "Turner, look at this. The rebellions aren't random anymore. The different species are starting to coordinate with each other. How is that possible? Most of these worlds have never had contact before the Zephyrian conquest. The collective consciousness. Even as it's breaking down, it's still connecting minds across the galaxy. The enslaved species are using the Zephyrian mental network to communicate with each other. On Proxima Centauri b, Queen Mind Zaxth was indeed communicating with leaders on other worlds. The insectoid Cricks were sharing tactical information, with the aquatic Merhai, who were coordinating with the crystalline Shardhai, who were working with the humanoid Thalans. My fellow freedom seekers, Zaxth broadcast through the chaotic collective consciousness, we are stronger together than we ever were apart. Let us coordinate our efforts to reclaim our worlds. The greatest irony of the situation was becoming clear. The Zephyrians had created a galactic communication network to maintain control over their empire. Now that same network was being used to coordinate the largest rebellion in galactic history. Admiral Carter received a communication request from an unexpected source, the Zephyrian High Command on their capital world. The beings who had ordered the conquest of Earth wanted to negotiate. "This is Admiral Lisa Carter of Earth Defense Command," she responded to the transmission. The alien who appeared on screen was different from the Zephyrians they had seen before. This one showed signs of individual personality, emotional stress, and something that looked remarkably like uncertainty. "Admiral Carter, I am High Mind Thalvin of the Zephyrian Council. We wish to discuss cessation of hostilities. What terms are you offering?" "That is the problem, Admiral. We have never negotiated before. Our collective consciousness always provided optimal solutions, but individual conscience has introduced variables we cannot calculate. We do not know how to proceed." General Thompson was coordinating the response to liberation requests from across the galaxy when he realized the full scope of what was happening. "Admiral, we're not just witnessing the end of the Zephyrian Empire. We're seeing the birth of something entirely new." "What do you mean?" "A galactic community based on cooperation rather than conquest. The species that are being liberated aren't just fighting for their individual freedom. They're talking about working together to build something better." Dr. Turner was analyzing the emotional patterns still flowing through the Zephyrian network when he made his final discovery. "Emma, the human emotions we broadcast aren't just disrupting their collective consciousness. They're teaching them how to feel as individuals while still maintaining connection with others. A collective consciousness based on choice rather than compulsion?" "Exactly. We may have accidentally created the model for a truly democratic galactic civilization. As the rebellion spread across the galaxy, one thing became clear. The universe would never be the same. Humanity's refusal to surrender had not just saved their own species, it had liberated an entire galaxy and shown that freedom was indeed a universal right. The war was ending, but something far greater was just beginning. 6 months had passed since the day that would be remembered as the Great Awakening. Captain Amy Davis stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Galactic Freedom Station, watching ships from 49 different species working together to build something unprecedented in galactic history, a truly free interstellar community. The Zephyrian Empire had not been destroyed through military conquest. Instead, it had transformed itself from within as individual conscience spread through their collective consciousness like a benevolent virus. Former Fleet Mind Vash, now calling himself simply Vash, approached Amy with a report in his hands. "Captain Davis," he said, his voice carrying emotions that no Zephyrian had possessed just months earlier. "The final liberation fleet has returned from the Outer Rim. The Kepler 438b system is now free, and its people have requested to join the Galactic Federation." Amy smiled as she took the report. The transformation of the Zephyrians still amazed her. They had not just abandoned their empire. They had become some of the most dedicated advocates for freedom in the galaxy, driven by guilt over their past actions and genuine desire to make amends. How are they adapting to independence? She asked. Better than expected. The Veltar have a natural gift for engineering. They've already designed 3 new types of peaceful starships and offered to share the technology freely with all Federation members. President Katie Walsh was addressing the first Galactic Council from Earth's capital, her words being broadcast to every liberated world. The council chamber had been designed by Shardhai crystal singers, built by Thalan engineers, decorated by Merhai artists, and equipped with technology from dozens of species working in cooperation. Representatives of the free worlds, she began. 6 months ago, humanity faced extinction. Today, we stand not as conquerors, but as equals among friends. The choice we made to fight for freedom rather than accept slavery has freed not just our own species, but 48 others across the galaxy. Elder Sithka of the Thalans rose to respond. His world had become one of the most prosperous in the galaxy since liberation, as his people's natural mining abilities were finally being used for their own benefit rather than to serve alien masters. Madam President, he said, the Thalan, people owe humanity a debt that can never be repaid. You showed us that freedom is not just a privilege for the strong, but a right that belongs to all intelligent beings. Dr. Alex Turner was working in his new laboratory aboard the Federation Research Station, collaborating with scientists from across the galaxy. The emotional broadcast technology that had triggered the Great Awakening was being studied and refined, not as a weapon, but as a tool for promoting understanding between species. Dr. Turner, said his new colleague, Dr. Murnash of the aquatic Merhai, our latest tests show that emotional resonance between species can create permanent empathic bonds. This could revolutionize interspecies relations. That's exactly what we hoped for, Turner replied. The goal was never to control other minds, but to help them understand what it means to be free. Dr. Emma Foster had made perhaps the most important discovery of all. Working with former analysis mind Keth, who now served as a researcher rather than a military analyst, she had learned that consciousness itself was far more complex than anyone had imagined. The collective consciousness wasn't inherently evil, she explained to the Galactic Science Council. It was simply incomplete. The Zephyrians had unity without diversity, connection without choice. What we've helped create is something new. Voluntary collective consciousness, where individuals can share thoughts and feelings while maintaining their personal freedom. The former Zephyrian capital world had been transformed into the headquarters of the Galactic Mediation Service. High Mind Thalvan, who now went by the name Thal, worked tirelessly to help resolve conflicts between newly liberated species. The guilt he felt over his people's past actions had become a powerful motivation for peace. Mediator Thal reported. His assistant, a young human named Lieutenant Claire Webb, who had volunteered for interspecies service. We've successfully resolved the territorial dispute between the Krix and the Veltar. Both species have agreed to share the mining rights to the asteroid belt in question. Excellent work, Lieutenant. It seems that former enemies can indeed become partners when they both value freedom above conquest. Captain Jake Morrison was commanding the new Federation Exploration Service, leading mixed-species crews on missions to contact civilizations that had never encountered the Zephyrian Empire. Their goal was not conquest or conversion, but simple contact and the sharing of knowledge. Captain, reported his first officer, Commander Vralth, the former Zephyrian ship mind who had first chosen conscience over duty. We're approaching the Barnard's star system. Long-range scans show signs of intelligent life on the second planet. Remember the protocol, Commander. We offer friendship and knowledge, but we respect their choice to refuse contact if they prefer isolation. Understood, Captain. It is still difficult for me to imagine approaching other beings without the intention to conquer them, but I am learning that cooperation creates far more value than domination ever did. On Earth, memorial services were being held for the humans who had died in the brief but decisive war. Major Ben Rodriguez, who had survived the destruction of Jupiter Station, spoke at the ceremony honoring Commander Greg Adams, who had sacrificed his mind to operate the emotional broadcast device. Greg Adams died so that not just humanity, but the entire galaxy could live free, Rodriguez said to the gathered crowd. He showed us that sometimes the greatest weapon is not the ability to destroy, but the willingness to share what makes us human. The memorial was attended by representatives from every liberated world. Crystalline Shardhai sang harmonic tributes, aquatic Merhai composed water poems of remembrance, and even former Zephyrians offered their own prayers for the humans who had taught them the value of individual sacrifice. Engineer Sophie Miller had survived her sabotage mission and was now leading the Federation Engineering Corps in designing new types of technology based on cooperation rather than domination. Her latest project was a communication system that could connect different species while preserving their individual cultural identities. The old Zephyrian network forced everyone to think the same way, she explained to her multi-species team. Our new system will let everyone think their own thoughts while still being able to share them with others when they choose to. Dr. Helen Brooks was working on what many considered the most important project in the galaxy, the Freedom Archives. She was collecting the stories, songs, art, and cultural memories of every liberated species, preserving them for future generations. Every species we've contacted has the same thing, she reported to the Galactic Cultural Council. Stories of heroes who chose freedom over safety, tales of resistance against impossible odds, myths about the importance of individual choice. It seems that the desire for freedom is truly universal. The Galactic Federation was growing every month as more species were contacted and invited to join, but membership was always voluntary, and several civilizations had chosen to remain independent while maintaining friendly relations. The Federation respected these choices, understanding that true freedom included the right to choose isolation. President Walsh stood before the assembled representatives for the signing of the Galactic Freedom Charter, a document that guaranteed the rights of all intelligent beings regardless of species, technology level, or cultural development. Today we establish not an empire, but a community, she said, as representatives from 49 worlds prepared to sign. A community based on the principle that freedom is not something to be granted by the powerful, but something that belongs to all thinking beings by right of their existence. Former Fleet Mind Vash was the first to sign, his signature shaking slightly as he wrote. For my people, he said, this represents not just membership in the Federation, but forgiveness for the crimes we committed. We pledge to spend the rest of our existence proving that even conquerors can learn to become protectors of freedom. As the ceremony concluded, Captain Amy Davis activated the new Galactic Communication Network. Her message would reach every world in Federation space and would be remembered as Earth's final transmission to the galaxy. People of the free worlds, she began. 6 months ago, the Zephyrian Empire gave humanity a choice: surrender our freedom or face extinction. Today, I want to send a different message to any who might threaten the freedom of others. She paused, looking out at the representatives of dozens of species who had learned that cooperation was stronger than conquest, that diversity was more valuable than uniformity, that choice was more powerful than compulsion. We are no longer separate species, struggling alone against the darkness of oppression. We are a galactic community united by our shared commitment to freedom. To any who would enslave others, to any who would force their will upon the innocent, to any who believe that might makes right, we say this: Amy.